Thank you super duper very much. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And I'm recording this. Fair warning. My name is Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film Eddington. And Topam fam, he's home.
I've come back.
He came back.
I flew on an eagle.
Wow.
Like Seal in that in a song. Fly like an eagle. Let your spirit.
I don't know if that's Seal.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Yeah, because it's from the Michael Jordan. It's from Space Jam.
That's not Seal.
That is Seal.
Is it Seal? I'm going to Spotify right now, and we will not play it due to not being DMCA'd.
Fly like an eagle.
Let's see. Hold on.
Look,
Seal.
so out of key, by the way.
Seal. Fly
like an eagle.
Wow, I never knew Fly Like an Eagle was Seal.
Well, this is the fun facts that I bring to the table after traveling away for the last 3 weeks. Thank you so much for holding it down while I was away. We recorded a bunch of episodes before I left, one of which we still haven't released at this point. Yeah. We have an episode on Sing Sing, which we're still due to release. But you did it all. You covered the podcast, you did the graphic, you edited the show, you uploaded it, did all the socials, posted it everywhere.
Yeah.
As well as talked about the movies.
Of course.
With special guest Nando's V Movies and Balvin.
Balvin, yeah. The Lord himself. We had some fun. We chatted about some things. We talked about men flying and cars going fast and a bunch of other stuff. Please go listen to those episodes if you already haven't. It's been a good couple weeks for movies.
Wow. I saw F1 and I saw Superman while I was away because I have a 9-year-old child and we went to see a screening of Superman. I did not take him to see F1.
The best dad movie of the year?
Actually, I went with a friend of mine, Dan Lynch, for that one. It was just like in the middle of the night. I texted him and I was like, hey, I'm in town. We haven't seen each other in 2 years. Want to go see F1? And we did. And we had a great time just hanging out and talking and seeing that movie. I love F1. I have not heard the episode on it.
I fucking loved F1.
Really?
I fucking loved F1 and I don't give you can listen to the episode. I don't give a shit about racing. I don't care about like Formula One, the sport. I fucking loved F1. I saw it in IMAX.
Yep. Saw it in IMAX. So did I.
Fuck, man. That movie slaps. And look, as I said on the show, and I won't go into it anymore because we have more to talk about.
Yeah.
I think that movie is a story and a movie we've seen 100 times.
Yeah.
But damn, they showed it this time really, really well. Like
the most impressive I guess formation of resolution in any movie in recent years, like famously shot with elements of the iPhone, but in sort of unusual ways, repurposing iPhone hardware for cinema cameras. Also there is a conversation, I think, happening or a patent that has been filed for Apple to make cinema cameras.
Yeah.
Or to use cinema processing in their cameras or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. And F1 might have been the testing ground for all that.
Interesting.
John Krasinski, who directed that film, John or Joseph, I always forget.
Joseph, I believe.
Again, along with Top Gun Maverick and Oblivion and Tron Legacy, knows how to make a beautiful image on screen. I just didn't love the movie, to be honest with you. And I'm not, while I appreciated the technicalities of the Formula One racing industry, this was so much of a like, Brad Pitt's just a good old boy who can drive real fast. I was just like, okay, cool.
I am a sucker for a sports movie. And here's the thing. I don't give a shit about sports.
Yeah.
I am a sucker for a sports movie that makes me give a shit about a sport. And I don't know, I must have been blown away by the visuals because I started caring.
You started caring.
And I like the technicality of like, and I know it is false for the film.
Yeah.
But like the way in which Brad Pitt's good old boy kind of gets the like maneuvers the rules in his favor in interesting ways that is honestly more interesting than turn left a lot.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't know. I don't know.
I thought it was also like a very high product placement movie. And the fact that it's funded by Apple, but there was a moment, the Apple cinema display is a $5,000 screen. I think that's $5,000.
Yeah.
Fact check me on that. And there's a moment where they're in a room and there's like 4 of them on the table. And I was like, that's $20,000 of screen on the table.
That's the tech you were impressed with?
Not only that. Okay, I fell down a rabbit hole about this, and I'm going to look it up while we're on this.
Did you miss us? Topam? Yeah. We're back. We're gonna go into the minutia you don't care about.
So Brad Pitt has actually owns a shirt company. He owns a shirt company.
Great.
They make linen shirts, I believe. It's called Cashmere Shirts. God's True Cashmere.
That's what the company's called?
Yeah, that's what the company is called, unless I'm reading it wrong. And he's wearing all of this stuff in the movie. Do you know how much? There's a scene where he's like, I think they're in Vegas, and he's wearing a God's linen cashmere shirt, like very open sleeve for carefree dude. That shirt costs $6,500.
That's stupid.
And I was just like, and then I went on the website for God's True Cashmere, and I was looking at, and everything on there is like thousands upon thousands.
That's stupid.
Of
if
dollars.
you buy a shirt for $6,000, you're stupid.
Brad Pitt thinks otherwise. Hang on, let me just pull.
Well,
up.
Brad Pitt's not in the best standing right now, so I don't really know.
Yeah. There's like $2,500 shirts.
Regardless,
Anyway,
regardless.
So that was
regardless of Brad Pitt being dumb or his shirt company being dumb.
I spent a lot of time just looking at like, wait, what shirt was he wearing and how much does this thing cost? And like, it was just sort of a wild ride. At any rate, and then I also saw a Man in Tights, red with red underwear over the top of it. And here's my hottest of hot takes, because I think you guys enjoyed the movie, right?
Oh, very much.
Yeah, very much so. I did not.
I figured you wouldn't.
I really did not, and I actually want to go see it again just to like validate or invalidate that feeling, because I saw it with kids, and I was thinking, and I talked to someone who's been on the podcast before, Stephen Gallagher, and we were both talking. If you go back to listen to our music and movies episode, where he's on and he's talking about music and movies, he recently just scored the War of the Rings, War for Rohirrim film.
Oh, cool!
So he did the entire score for that.
Hell yeah.
And on that episode that he was on, he talked about how like the theme song for Superman, the John Williams score, was actually a catalyst for him wanting to become a composer. Such a powerful thing. And I think we sort of use this as an entryway into our feelings about the film, but we were like waiting for the film to soar because of like that feeling that the John Williams score gave us. And the film didn't soar for either of us.
Oh, that's too bad.
And I think it was like, to me, it was just a really overstuffed movie.
I loved it. Double stuff. Give me those Oreos.
Give me Oreo double stuff. Where I didn't understand the reason for the stuffing. And I actually got like really lost in like, why is this happening? And there was a real sense to me of like, Superman has obviously always been kind of a sort of a boring character, but he was really uninteresting in his own movie.
Oh, I found it. This is one of the few times I found him interesting.
Really?
Yeah.
My son commented on this, and I kind of agreed. It was like Mr. Terrific walked away with the movie.
Mr. Terrific was dope as hell. James Gunn is the king of taking a C-list character that you've never heard of. And sorry for any Mr. Terrific fans out there. I was not familiar with him.
Yeah.
But the same we did with Guardians, same we did with the Suicide Squad. He just can take characters that that the majority of people haven't really heard much about and make them the coolest motherfuckers on the planet.
It was, he was I was like, oh, that guy. What are we doing with that guy? I'm interested in that guy.
Yeah.
And the rest of the movie, I was just like, yeah, that's stuff happening. But I am interested in seeing it again. This is the hottest, most controversial take, and I've gotten into arguments about this with friends. I like Man of Steel more. I like Man of Steel a lot.
Yeah,
more.
you're objectively wrong.
What's funny is I rewatched Man of Steel just to figure this out, and I was like, I like Man of Steel a lot more.
So what you are saying, what we're getting to now, we've come after 10 years, full circle. You want to bring back the Snyderverse, is what you're telling me right now.
Yeah, I want to 100% bring back the Snyderverse.
Okay.
You can go back and listen to our episodes where I lavish praise.
You do. Every one of the Zack Snyder DCEU films, Shahir has done nothing but praise.
Yeah. But,
the truth comes out. It's funny. You were a wolf in sheep's clothing, and now I see you for your true colors.
I am a Snyder bro in Brad Pitt's linens.
Also, let's be very clear. We talked about this in the podcast too. I don't dislike Zack Snyder.
No.
I just don't really vibe with his DC movies.
Oh, I think was it Justice League and Batman v Superman are just atrocious movies. They're unbearably bad movies.
Yeah.
But I actually quite liked The Swing with Man of Steel. And when we now watch it in comparison to the two reboots that have happened since the Christopher Reeve, the Richard Donner movies, which is the Bryan Singer, Brandon Routh film.
That's not a reboot. That's a continuation.
Well, it's a new movie.
Right, but it's technically not a reboot. It is a sequel where they recast the character.
Sure.
Yeah.
And now James Gunn's version, I was like, this is the one I prefer. of the three.
Wow. You think you know a guy.
You do. But we are not here to talk about all those things. And we will catch up on this episode or in future episodes about things that have happened in the last few weeks.
I've been here.
You've been here. You've looked after my cats.
Yeah, that's true. They were great.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for looking after
my cats. We were, it was fun to try to keep them from eating each other's food. Yeah. We came up with interesting ways to do so. They lose their shit for that little, you have a great toy. It's like a wand with a long, fluffy blue thing.
Yeah.
Which randomly disappeared halfway through me watching them. Is it there now?
It is there now. It actually started as a sex toy, but now it's there.
Well, okay. Well, either way, it was there and then they hid it from me. And then I don't know what happened, but it was good. I'm glad it still existed. It didn't apparate into another universe.
And I'll be looking after your cat this weekend. We're cat sitters for each other, which is great. Jamie gave me a book to read while I was away. Endurance, the story of Ernest Shackleton.
Did she?
Which I read the whole way through.
And what'd you think?
A really fascinating story. There's a thing in Ernest Shackleton's story where they talk about the fact that they make the thing that they survived on with these thing called dog pemmicans.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what it is. And I've been furiously searching the internet to understand what this was. Because this is every 10 pages, they were like, and we ate our rations of dog pemmican today.
If Jamie was here, she could tell you everything about a dog pemmican, I guarantee. Yeah. I don't know what they are.
I don't know what it is.
But it's the same kind of thing. She tells me all of these very interesting things, but I feel like it's the same level of knowledge retention when I talk to her about build structures in Elden Ring.
Right.
Neither of us, we both love each other very much. We couldn't care less. But here we are.
Here we are. With Ari Aster's fourth film, all of which we have reviewed on this podcast.
I love it.
Ari Aster has been a filmmaker that we have kind of, this happens from time to time, filmmakers that we've kind of
come up with
in some way. They've been around as long as the podcast has been around. Starting with, what year was Hereditary? That feels like it was 2018 or something like that.
Yeah.
Followed by Midsommar. Beau is Afraid, which I know is a really, you love that.
Love it. It's in my closet.
Yeah. And then now following up with Eddington. Could you tell us what Eddington is about?
I sure can. The Internet Movie Database says, quote, in May of 2020, a standoff between a small town sheriff and mayor sparks a powder keg as neighbor is pitted against neighbor in Eddington, New Mexico.
New Mexico. Now, Ari Aster is a New Mexico native. So this was a film to return to.
I didn't know that. This felt like it was made by someone who lived there.
Who spent time there, as far as I understand. This is also the first of his films. I guess you could make the argument about Beau is Afraid as well, but the first of his films, which does not feature a supernatural element of any kind. Although I guess you could argue Midsommar does not either.
I guess not.
Yeah. So maybe it's only Hereditary. It's that movie.
Hereditary is the only one that has a
supernatural element. And that movie made such a deep impression on me.
You're like, that's his oeuvre.
That's his thing. He does supernatural stuff in every movie. That is not the case.
This is going to be an interesting episode, I think, because I saw this movie about an hour ago.
Oh, boy.
And I tried. When I can, I do the Shahir approach and I go in cold. So when a movie that is not Superman, although actually, you know what, Shahir, I've been very good about Fantastic Four. Okay. I have no idea what that fucking movie is going to be.
I have not watched
I'm going tomorrow at 9 a.m.
Nice.
But I stayed away from this and I only literally had 20 minutes before you got here to look up anything about Eddington.
Right.
So I didn't find much. So we are in a post Beau is Afraid world. And
are we though?
It feels like it has shaped a little bit of some things. This movie is in no way as what's the word I'm looking for?
Impactful?
No, not impactful. What's the word I'm looking for? Representative of various psychologies or emotions or anything, but it gets into a place where it tries to, I think, have that cake a little bit throughout near the last third.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this movie is not. The entire time I was like, I don't think this movie's working for me. I just don't. I don't know. There's something about it. It feels like it's made very well, and but then I was like, what is the message here? And maybe we'll figure it out by the time we're done talking. But I will say that by the time the end credits rolled, I was like, oh God, I think I did enjoy myself. Like it took me the entire movie, but at the end I was like,
did you feel like you needed a shower?
No, I think I liked the movie. I don't think this is a movie that like, oh my God, it's the best thing and everyone has to see it. I just think that like there's something special in it. And I don't think I found it yet. Like, I think my subconscious grasped onto something. Yeah. And again, this is not trying to like sing incredible praises for it. I don't even know how this has been critically acclaimed. I haven't even looked it up. But there's something about the structure of a movie that kind of keeps changing that I do enjoy when a movie says it doesn't have to be like one thing. And Ari Aster kind of does that a lot, you know? So this was just felt like a little bit, you know, obviously closer to home in a small town in New Mexico. I did really enjoy / was annoyed with the entire time. The way that it does a really good job painting every side of politics as insufferable. I don't think that's fair. And I think it's kind of problematic in the sense to try to paint one side as harsh as the other, but I of course am biased in that. I think what this movie does is it does a really good job at showing what one side of the political spectrum sees on the other side of the political spectrum, but we just get both of those. Does that make sense?
Yeah. There's certainly like a both sides sucks kind of approach here.
It's both sides sucks, but it sucks from the perspective of the side that thinks they suck. Like it's everything ramped to 11 that both right-wing people and liberal people think of the other one. Yeah. But those are just how everyone acts in this world.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I didn't enjoy watching it until it was over.
Yeah.
Does that make I'm coming up with these theories in real time.
Of course, you just walked out of the movie, and I've had a week to sit with this movie.
What did you think?
And I think you need a week, or you need time from this movie to kind of really get it. And I think I've sat it a week away from it, and I still kind of have mixed feelings about the whole thing.
Yeah.
This is obviously set in the sort of early days of the pandemic, May of 2020.
Yep.
So the pandemic has just set in. This is a small New Mexico town where COVID apparently hasn't arrived on the scene, but people are being forced to wear masks, which, you know, as you say, kind of spirals the sort of anti-mask rhetoric that is happening. Trump is not mentioned in the movie, I don't think.
He's seen in a couple
of iPhone
stuff, but there's lots of stuff.
Yeah. I think that would probably politicize the movie in a way that's probably not going to work for the movie, not work in the movie's favor, because I think a thing that Aster is kind of really interested in is the way that internal conflicts kind of permeate into people's politics. So, to have like a really outward political conversation doesn't seem like his MO or what he's probably interested in. I think there is something to the fact that he is a big fan of Roy Anderson. So we've talked about Songs from the Second Floor, which I think is a big influence on him. And A Pigeon Sat on O'Brien's Reflecting on Existence, which the ending of this movie really leans into something sort of like that in that style. And I mean the very, very ending of the movie. So we won't talk about that specifically. Sure. I have to say, while I think, I noted this from Hereditary, which is that he is a filmmaker with a singular vision that seems to be supported by the institutions around him to support like unusual ideas in his film. I talked about it in Hereditary, this idea that they went and built this house and filmed it in such a way so that he could kind of maneuver through it. It really speaks volumes to the fact that he's like a singular-minded filmmaker. Yeah. And, this movie shot by Darius Khondji, one of the great cinematographers of all time, looks gorgeous and has that kind of like stilted, unnerving sense of paranoia that he's really good at. That you're always kind of just threatening, feels like it's threatening to explode into violence at any second. You're like not sure what exactly was going to happen in any kind of interaction. Like a car could literally run through the frame and mow everybody over at any moment, kind of thing. For me, the both sides isms of the film kind of like rendered it a little bit null and void in terms of like feeling like it actually had something interesting to say other than sort of projecting a nihilism onto the story.
Sure.
And there's you were talking about the fact that the film kind of feels a little bit like what is this film trying to say at any point? The other reference point for this film along from like other than like old westerns is the Coen brothers and a particular film like No Country for Old Men, which kind of like sort of has a poetry to its nihilism, which is like yes, this is like the world is bleak and like unhappy, but there is a reason for that, even if that reason is meaninglessness. And, which is like a really convoluted way to say that the Coen brothers can find meaning in emptiness. I'm not sure I found meaning in the emptiness of this movie. And I found that the sort of nihilism the nihilism throughout the entirety of it kind of by the end of it gave way to nothingness for me, as opposed to meaning. I didn't, and maybe this is another thing that happened when I was away in New Zealand was a couple of friends and I got together and we were sitting around and we were basically recounting our COVID stories from different points of view. So they were in New Zealand, who obviously had a very different response to the COVID pandemic, one that was widely politicized as like the gold standard for how to deal with COVID. Jacinda Ardern was the prime minister at that time. If you remember, they had a lockdown for 3 weeks, and then after that 3 weeks, life went back to normal. Like they had right. So their experience of COVID was vastly different to our experience of COVID, where and I think Ari Aster's film kind of like obviously shows our experience of COVID.
Yes.
The reason I mention that, and just by the way, this is an aside, the New Zealand thing obviously then fractured off into something closer to the American experience towards the end of it. In terms of like what I think is interesting about the COVID experience as we talked about it was that there was a fracturing of reality at some point during COVID, which is that we lived in two different realities. On the one side, there were us applauding, in New York City at least, standing up and applauding for nurses walking in through the, in the shift changer. You remember that?
You bang your pots.
At 6 p.m., you'd all get up and clap. And then on the other side of it, there was like, COVID's not real. Face masks are a conspiracy theory, that kind of thing. And there's this sort of like strange fracturing of reality that happened. And I think there was an interesting period in that, which this movie really reflects, is that there's Joaquin Phoenix's character is kind of living in that, there's the ether of conspiracy theory around him and his family, particularly his mother-in-law and his wife, played by Emma Stone, of a sort of mixed understanding of what reality was. Because for them, COVID existed as they were being told it, but it didn't really exist, right? Like it didn't exist in New Mexico, and they were like, there's no COVID in Eddington.
Yeah, it's fun.
And it created this like strange fracturing of reality.
I think it's interesting because, hindsight is, 2020, whatever.
Which is the tagline for the movie.
Is it really?
On the first poster, hindsight is 2020. I was like, that's a very clever tagline.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. But like, there's something interesting, right? Because I don't know. I would like to think, even though probably not, that most people would know, like now being like, oh, well, maybe we could stop the spread of something if we did do things in places where it wasn't yet, because these things do spread.
Yeah.
You look at it, you watch these characters now and you're like, you fucking idiots. But
not actually, because there are people now.
I know.
Who think that none of this happened.
Yeah, there's a the reason why I think I found this movie interesting, especially by the end, is Joaquin Phoenix's character, the sheriff there, whose name is escaping me, Joe Cross.
Yeah,
is interesting because what I liked at the beginning of this movie, and it does lose it eventually, is the both sidesism you kind of understood a little bit. Like, it's not that, even though it turns out, yes, he is a piece of shit, but Joe Cross at the point in the movie, he isn't wearing his mask because he doesn't think it's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And then an elderly community member wanted to go grocery shopping and was complaining that he couldn't breathe in the mask, and they wouldn't let him in. And then they eventually kick him out, and there's a whole big thing. And then he buys the guy's groceries. There is and Joe has asthma, and he says he has a problem breathing in the mask. And there's the discussion between a mandate and a law, and like all the technicalities that comes with trying to enforce a society. And like, it's not that I agree with anything he's saying, but what I did appreciate in this movie was like, oh, well, this is a really good example of how someone thinks truly that they are in the right, and they are not being detrimental. They are being helpful, in fact.
Yeah.
And something that it sucks because there's nothing to be done about it. Like, even gleaning this from the film does not make me feel more charitable towards people in those ways.
Yeah.
I don't think this film was designed to do that either.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is why it leaves you with the feeling of like, well, yeah. Like, you know, but it is at least interesting and probably a healthy reminder that, you know, people on any side of a thing that you don't agree with aren't all, at least they didn't all start as batshit lunatics. Like there's a lot of ways that people think that they are doing good.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's many ways in my life that I think I'm doing good and I'm not. Like this is not everybody else but me. This is just humans, right? Yeah. So I found that, especially in the first third of this movie, very, very interesting, especially between Joe Cross's character and Ted Garcia, the mayor of the town, played by Pedro Pascal.
Yeah.
Because they both seemed like, again, what the other side of a political aisle thinks of the other side of the political aisle.
I actually really like that reading because I found, as I watched it, I was kind of like on neither side of them.
Yeah.
Not on either side of them, but I was like, I felt neither was like a realistic response, a realistic portrayal of the other.
Right.
But I like your reading, which is that they are how the other side believes they are.
Yeah.
A kind of thing, which I think is interesting. Unfortunately, the film does live through Joe Cross's POV and ultimately becomes about his story. But I don't think the film is a morality tale in any way.
No, though you could, in a way. Actually, you know what? The more I'm talking about it, the more I think it might be pretty damn clever.
Mm-hmm.
So Joe's story, if I imagine, and write us in, onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com, if you can speak to this, I could imagine people on the right side of the aisle could, in the first third of this movie, justify everything Joe is doing. Is he being a little bumbly? Yeah, 1,000%.
Yeah.
But he thinks
he's got good intentions.
But he's got good intentions, and all he wants to do is make his town better.
Yeah.
By the time, and you know, kind of getting into spoilers here, where Joe is murdering people and framing the only black cop.
Yeah.
What this movie kind of does is it turns things there's like a bunch of white liberal kids, or not all white, but like liberal kids protesting during the George Floyd.
Yeah.
Right after that happened, like in the streets of Eddington, again, nowhere near where George Floyd was, but still. And they, antagonize the cops, and the cops don't respond well, and like all this other stuff. So like in the beginning, all that sort of played as like a joke, haha, dumb liberals, which sure.
Yeah.
But then by the time Joe's story gets to the point of like he's framing the only black cop in the town, like you're like, oh, why is he? Oh, because it's the easiest thing to do. Like there's a way it starts to undermine the simplicity with I think quite elegant storytelling, now that I'm thinking about it. In that case, there's other cases I feel like it is not elegant, and that would be more along the lines of anything having to do with Solid Gold Magikarp.
Solid Gold Magikarp, the AI company, the data firm that comes in.
Data firm, which, what a name.
So Solid Gold Magikarp actually has a real world analog, right? Like it is.
I have no idea. I just can't, as an 80s kid and early 90s kid, I can't think Magikarp and not Pokemon.
Right.
So every time that was said, I was like, are they just breeding fucking Pokemon in that building?
I did some very just very tertiary glances at this, and apparently Solid Gold Magikarp is a LLM token which involves the hallucination of AI models. So,
interesting.
Apparently, like there are cases where you could ask it, you could ask AI models to recite, certain easy questions, and when it hallucinates, it'll come up with unusual connections of words like Solid Gold Magikarp. So it's sort of, hallucinations of real data inputs and that sort of thing.
I do wish, in the conversation of AI, we'd stop calling it hallucinations, because it's an error. It's an error in what it's trying to do. And when we say the word hallucination, it's like it's alive, and it's not, at least not yet.
Sure. I think it's a bigger question, a bigger conversation.
Sure. We're not going to get into that.
Yeah.
But whenever it personifies it as a being more than a tool.
Yeah.
And maybe one day it will become that, but it is not yet. And so I use it all the time too. This is not, I'm not saying your use of it. I say it all the time. I just wish that wasn't the vernacular.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, you and I did several episodes where we kind of talked about COVID. We often talked about like the mask mandates and the need for people to kind of keep their 6 feet distances. So I appreciated the movie being a sort of mirror reflection of how people might perceive us in that moment. We had an episode after the George Floyd protest where we kind of, I think, both felt that we didn't feel like we should put an episode out that week. So we just had 8 minutes and 47 seconds of silence, which they do in the movie. They go to one knee, and I still, I don't regret any of that.
No,
or
not at all.
like that. But it was like interesting to sort of see the movie reflect on that, and give you the perception of how that might be read from the other side.
You can see the way that especially, and it really does come down to, and I think this movie again does a really good job the more I'm talking about it. It comes down to the second you give every person a camera and the ability to record a narrative.
Yeah.
Not even insidiously. I'm not talking about like, propaganda, but like every time you do that, people that are like, maybe are not, aren't trained in how to tell a story or just like living their lives with the camera. And there's nothing wrong with that inherently. But the second that every piece of that can be broadcast to everyone else, like, I think this movie does a really good job showing like, this kind of also breaks your brain. Like everybody in this movie is on their phone.
Yeah.
At like down to the point, like they're going to bed on their phone, protesting on their phone, all this stuff on their phone. Everyone's filming everyone. And, again, it is a mirror. Like I go to bed looking at my phone first and then I fall asleep and I wake up and I check my phone. It's so fucking stupid. And I'm trying to buck it and it's hard.
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting thing because I think, what this movie does a good job illustrating is how quickly, actually, both sides, depending on where you're thinking about it in the film, can take any piece of footage or post or anything and turn it into essentially a thing for something else. Like they do that with like, Joe. It was Joe, right? Yeah, Joe. He, a homeless man who I think it is fascinating what they do with that character.
Clifton Collins Jr. from Traffic plays that character.
The character's name is Lodge, actually. I didn't know that. When Joe fails to get the homeless guy Lodge out of Ted's bar, that moment is played for comedy in the world of the movie, but one of the kids films it from outside, and then they turn it to be a moment of police brutality. And on one level, I don't love what that is saying because that's like, well, then all of like it like gives you that idea like that it can all be maneuvered, but it does it again. I feel like on both sides of things in this movie. So like, I think why in the moment I wasn't connecting with it, I was like, I don't think I really like this, is because it was holding essentially an uncomfortable mirror up to the way that I personally get and try to parse the information in my day to day.
Yeah.
And that's not an enjoyable thing to watch. But I'm enjoying thinking about it.
Yeah, and I think the reason that I'm sort of more ambivalent about it is about the way in which the sort of both sides sucks isms of this movie. Why I feel ambivalent about it is that ultimately it lands in a place of meaninglessness that I didn't really extract much from the film. Now, this is not to say I wasn't in admiration of the movie. Like I actually certainly think the craftsmanship and the storytelling and the way in which Ari Aster's interests as a filmmaker are all fascinating to me. But for example, there's a point at which there are what I presume to be either like billionaire crisis actors or Antifa fly into the town of Eddington at some point, and there's a sort of a showdown at the OK Corral, like at the end of this movie between them and Joe Cross, and it becomes like a sort of strangely fascinating, oddly detached, like sequence of extreme violence with like massive guns, like on the scale that the Terminator would have at the end of Terminator 2. And ultimately I found myself like entirely detached from the whole thing. And I think that was an interesting thing about like thinking about this and the Coen brothers, No Country for Old Men in particular, which is that No Country for Old Men is really making a thesis about the way nihilism has crept into the world to render us powerless against the way the world turns, right? And ultimately, there's something being said at the end of that movie. You know, like Tommy Lee Jones talks about the idea that A, it's a No Country for Old Men, but B, that you know, like this is not a world he recognizes anymore, and he has seen unspeakable things.
Sure.
And he is trying to make sense of a world that doesn't really make sense. And there is not a sort of hint of that kind of introspection in this movie at this point. I think there's a sort of like, you know, closer. And again, it's weird because it's closer to the way Roy Anderson does things, which is that like there's a sort of observation of absurdity that happens, particularly in the, you know, the final sequences of this movie when Cross has finally been dispatched and has become paralyzed and now becomes the mayor, allowing Solid Magikarp into the town, but is like helpless to do anything. So he just kind of like is being used as
the gullible conspiracy theory mother-in-law is kind of his caretaker / kind of running the show.
Yeah. And I think there's a sort of like observational absurdity to that.
Yeah.
But
Deirdre O'Connell, great as always.
But it is kind of like, I found myself detached and not extracting meaning from it in a sort of profound way. And that is odd for the fact that, you know, if we're talking about descending qualities of films or descending, you know, Ari Aster's filmography in terms of descending order, the thing that I was so attracted to in Hereditary and Midsommar is that in the nihilism, in the brutality, in the sort of like really deeply misanthropic worlds that he creates in those two particular movies, there is a sense of like ultimately human flaws and human characters that like are navigating this world, and we as an audience extract meaning from it. Like, you know, Hereditary, when Toni Collette's character is talking about the trauma of her mother, you know, and the fact that she's passing it down to her child, we really feel that, and we understand that the sort of conspiracy theories that are, you know, the cults that are happening in that world kind of lend itself to this sort of greater meaning that Ari Aster is providing us in that film, right? And same in Midsommar as well, which has to do with relationships. What I'm saying is here in Eddington, I am struggling with that. And it was the same in Beau is Afraid as well. I think so. I'm kind of like, you know, I think I just might have hit something on it. So this movie isn't doing like, I think the reason why, again, it feels uncomfortable in the moment, that I kind of liked it at the end, is it's not trying to make a statement. Like at first, I too was upset about the whataboutism, or the kind of like painting both sides as equally bad. But then I don't think that's actually the point. I think it's kind of a tool, because I don't think the point is to show one side is bad or both sides are bad. I think the point is to show when and how, in many ways, the world stepped over the edge of being broken. And I think now, having watched and discussed 4 of his films, I think that's the theme about him, about in everything. So if you look at Hereditary, it's how familial trauma can break a person or break people. If you look at Midsommar, it's how religion and relationships can break people. If you look at Beau is Afraid, it's how anxiety and your own self-image can break people. And in this, it's literally about how your politics, social media, and a pandemic can break people. Like there's a really you are right in the like sort of narrative structure of having a deeper thing to say outside of that. I feel like the earlier movies are much more clear, but I don't think to me, it doesn't seem like he's interested in that anymore. He wants to find, it would seem, clever ways to subvert the viewer's expectation and try to get that idea across. Not so much to say, well, both sides are equally as bad. It's that both sides see each other as insane and see the world as a trap and see everything as against whatever they believe, and therefore they fight harder, and therefore madness just sort of continues. And you look at now and you kind of can see that. I think the problem with this movie is that I think you don't get to that understanding level unless you really want to, and or have a friend to do a podcast with about it. Like, you know, or like if you want to like actively think about it. And there's so many points in this movie that are natural bucking points that I would not
besmirch a single person and be like, nah, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean?
That is actually a common, when people have asked me about the movie, it's a common thread to say, I have mixed feelings about it, but if you told me you loved it, I wouldn't disagree with you. And if you told me you hated it, I wouldn't disagree with you either.
I think
and in a way, that is the measure of a great movie.
Kind of,
You know, like, I think, even though I'm not on board with this movie, it's kind of the measure of the level of discourse that we want from a movie.
I did not like this movie until it was over.
Right.
And that's interesting because that means it did something subjective and effective. Like it for me, right? Like
it has a point of view. And I think it's an original film that is reflecting upon an immediate time that we are an immediate time that we have recently lived through. You know, like in terms of pandemic movies, I can think of Steven Soderbergh's Kimmy, and we've had another movie that referenced COVID recently, and I can't remember what it was.
I don't remember.
Yeah. But you know, I like this idea that the movie really taps into that there is this fractured reality that we see, and it begins in very small ways. It begins with like the mask.
Yeah.
You know, like literally the mask becomes the point, the catalyst for the fracturing of reality for different characters. I think, and I hope that this isn't coming across as me being like liberal and therefore offended by some of the takes in this movie. I actually like that, you know, it offers a different perspective, but I think there's more nuance to the kind of madness that is going on right now in the world. And when the movie kind of reaches its sort of final catharsis or, you know, like conclusion, I don't find much meaning in it other than sort of, hey, look at this, you know, like, wasn't that interesting? And I think that maybe that has to do with like not really attaching myself to the character of Joe Cross in any way. And I think the mark of a great movie like No Country for Old Men is that even in the case of abhorrent characters like Anton Chigurh, there's a sort of attachment that happens to, you know, the audience to that character's point of view. And in this film, I wasn't really attached to any character's point of view as much as I was just kind of observing it from the outside.
Not even Austin Butler's cult leader guy?
The cult leader guy. No, you know, Emma Stone sort of stepping in and then stepping out of the movie.
Yeah.
This alongside the Safdies, it was not, I think it was Benny Safdie who directed, and Nathan Fielder's The Curse. You know, like another New Mexico story that Emma Stone was involved in. I think she's kind of, hopefully we'll do a New Mexico trilogy at this point. But yeah, I found myself just oddly detached from this film and not finding much insight into it other than I think these observations are interesting. And I think there are, you know, like there are interesting ideas at play here. The thing, you know, like the thing that got me excited about this movie was the poster. Have you seen the David Von Noroyowitz poster?
No, is it just with the bulls running over the bison running over the cliff?
Yeah, the famous photograph, which, you know, I've seen this photograph before. It was taken, I think, at the Washington Museum, and it was David Von Noroyowitz. I'm always going to pronounce that wrong. Von Noroyowitz. You know, kind of published it as untitled, and it had a lot of meaning for the AIDS movement in terms of the idea of like society slowly killing itself, flying off a cliff. And I like the idea, you know, when I saw that poster and, you know, kind of knew that this is, you know, the tagline is hindsight is 2020. I was like, oh, this is going to be an interesting exploration of that like really immediate time that we have just come out of and are kind of now still feeling the repercussions of. And I'm hoping for like some interesting observations about it. I don't think I got more than just sort of interesting observations.
I think the thing that I got out of it that is more than an interesting observation for me is the view into what someone who is a polar opposite of me politically sees.
Yeah.
Because I think it's funny because like if you show me a parody of a liberal doing some incredible like over the top nonsense, right? Yeah. I'm like, well, fuck you. That's not how it is.
Yeah.
But when you have it right next to the an over the top parody of a right wing person, and you're like, yeah, fuck that, and you're like, wait, no, like there's something that is really effective for me in seeing that, because and you have to see them next to each other to realize you hate them all, like in a way. And it's not that, like, look, at the end of the day, I truly believe that even though there's many, many failings, I of course am on the left side of the aisle, and I think that even the stuff that is mocked in this movie is important.
Yeah.
But I also am not loving the smell of my own farts to say that there's also not a lot of cringy shit that happens that's trying to be in service of what I consider better ideals.
Yeah.
So a movie calling out that I think is good. And I think it doesn't, you know what I was worried about? I was like, is this movie damaging like actual important causes? And I don't think
I don't
because
think that,
again, it's the mirror to both sides. How each side sees one another is what the audience sees.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really clever and subversive way. I would love it, truly. And if you are a right-leaning person and you've gotten to this far, thank you, first and foremost. I would love to hear from somebody. Email us in onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com who is more right-leaning than us. And I'd like to hear what they think of this movie.
I think they would. I'm not sure that they listen because they would think that we were insufferable.
We are insufferable. They're not wrong, but
Yeah.
we're not insufferable because of our politics. We're insufferable because of our personalities.
Yeah. I think where the movie lost me really truly was the
solid gold magic carpet Antifa plane.
Yeah, the solid gold magic carpet Antifa plane. Really,
It makes, like, you get it.
Yeah.
But it's a background story that suddenly becomes a foreground story.
Yeah. Without much context for what it is, why it's happening, and how it's going to operate within this.
Well, the context that I got is once the mayor is dead,
yeah,
then they realize that they can't go. He was the guy who's trying to get them in there anyway, because whether or not he believed it was going to be helpful or not, he was going to get them into the town.
Right.
They died, so now they need to make whoever is the new mayor sort of like scared enough or whatever to believe that there is an actual problem and let them come in and solve it.
Yeah.
Which is crisis actors and like all that sort of stuff. Which, look, there's I will not speak to anything that happened in my lifetime. History is littered with false flag nonsense.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that happened at any point in our recent history about anything, but like, it's not like that's a foreign idea to humans.
No, it's
like,
not. It's just
a person doing something bad dressed as a person they don't like, so that person's group gets in trouble. That's pretty old.
Yeah, certainly within the spectrum of conspiracy theory movies and things like this, it would certainly feel that way.
But even beyond conspiracy, like, it's just happened. Like, and I'm not saying like this specific thing, because of course not, but like, people do things to get other people in trouble all the time.
Are you a Trump assassination truther? Is that what is
that?
Well, like the assassination attempt, there's like all these people who are like truthers about that.
No, what does that mean?
Or you're an Epstein bro list guy?
No, what is? Well, I'm sorry, I'm not deep into the conspiracy theory lingo. I'm just talking about like people throughout history have lied to get other people in trouble a lot.
Right. Well, let's not delve into the conspiracy theory.
Wow, I gotta really up my my internet game.
Well, because you eventually fall into rabbit holes where it's like everything is a conspiracy theory.
Well, everything that the mother-in-law listens to,
is a
or the mother, yeah.
No, it's. I think it works on that. It works on for me. There's a sort of detached observational quality to this, and it's odd that like that is essentially what Roy Anderson does. Like that his film Songs from the Second Floor or A Pigeon Sat on a Branch Reflecting on Existence or About Endlessness, which we've talked about on this podcast, kind of have this sort of wry, detached observation about them. But they're essentially like also these odd dioramas that like fill like allow you to live and breathe within them and like see nuance within them. And this is one where I kind of am still, I guess, parsing what the story elements are, because there's so many of them at play that they feel like
almost as many as Superman.
Yeah. Well, but they feel disparate. It's a weird thing because my thing with Superman and I guess my thing with this is that they're both overstuffed. However, in the case of Superman, I was like, I had completely clocked out of that movie. Just sort of a real sense of detachment. With this film, I am actually interested, and I'm curious how the film actually really plays. As I said before, if you say you love this movie because of the way it made you feel and the way that it reflects upon the 2020, the experience of living through 2020 in America, that's great. And I'm not on the opposite side of that and saying that it really doesn't and I hate it and therefore all that sort of thing. I think I'm just more of like, I didn't really extract much from this other than I like what's going on here.
I think I did.
Well, great.
I think I did. But again, and the movie is the catalyst. And actually what this podcast we've said before is supposed to be like continuing the conversation the movie starts. I think for me, because I got on this episode of the podcast, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck I'm going to talk about in this movie. But the act of talking about it, I think, got me into a place that, like, I do think I get what it's going for. And if I'm wrong, and Ari Aster is going for something completely different, that's also fine because it can still mean that, you know, for me, again, I think I did not enjoy watching this movie, but at the end of it, I was like, yeah, I like this. Like,
and for me, I think it's sort of like somewhere in the middle of that, which is that I kind of enjoyed watching this movie, but at the end of it, I wasn't sure the place I'd landed.
Interesting.
You know, like I wasn't sure it had come together for me, you know, sort of way that I walked out of it, you know, feeling something. But I did enjoy it. There were moments where I think it's laugh out loud funny.
There's a lot of humor in this movie.
Yeah, it's pretty funny, pretty dry humor, and again, you know, I love the fact that Ari Aster at this point with 4 films in fills you with a sense of dread. Oh, you know, like at any interaction, there's just like, oh man, this is really going to go badly at some point. And there's this awareness that when it goes badly in an Ari Aster film at this point, it's like, it's going to go really badly. We're going to see some really fucked up shit. Or, you know, like we see a skull being stabbed in the head with a blade at this point. You know,
I mean, there's I forget what the gun is called, but I think it's a 50 cal. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
That he's walking down the street with. And shout out to also William Bellew, who played Officer Butterfly.
Yeah.
It was just great because he's always in the background, like figuring everything out. I really liked another thing, especially that the ending sort of did, and I think we're feeling this in late stage capitalism, is like the company Solid Gold Magikarp wins.
Yeah.
But then everything, all the bad shit that happened to get them to win is painted over in the martyrs that they kind of got killed to do. Like, for instance, there's a bunch of pictures of Ted in a place that feels like a memorial that's going through because it was his vision to have them build this data center. And then on the reservation side of things, there's on their side of their wind farm or whatever, like there's a painting of Officer Butterfly who died in the massacre that happened in Eddington.
And Brian, who is the sort of Black Lives Matter kid.
Brian, who is just trying to get laid.
Yeah.
It basically turns into a Rittenhouse kind of character, but didn't murder anybody. Oh no, he did murder somebody.
It was sort of Rittenhouse, but also
it was like a Black Mirror Rittenhouse.
Yeah, something like that.
It's and then he just like the second that at that moment in the movie when you start like seeing his future through sort of Insta stories, but it's 90 degrees because you're looking at. I was like
radicalizing the other way.
Yeah, and I was like, oh my god, this is painful to watch and it's so interesting.
Yeah,
I don't know. I liked that a lot.
It may also be the case that like we're just so close into it here that it's hard to like figure out like this film could act as a time capsule 20 years from now of like that was the period of time that we lived through, you know, like much in the same way that like Network kind of reflects the early days of television. We might look back at this and go, look at what these fucking people were up to
exactly
back then, you know.
And to your point, the Solid Gold Magikarp and Tifa Plane people and the way that Michael, the character played by Michael Ward, the way that story ends is really odd because they end up using him as a prop in an explosion.
Yeah.
But he eventually becomes sheriff. Like, so what does he think's going on? Like that was the one sort of like loose end because he lives and becomes sheriff.
Yeah.
What does he think happened that day? Like, we never get any closure on his character. Like it would assume that what happens, because he's arrested at a certain point, and then the Solid Gold Magikarp and Tifa Plane people come and break him out and like set him up around a bomb to cause more damage to cops to show on the internet because they're filming it with drones. But then, okay, so that's cool. That happened. He has scars and he's still doing target practice. What does he think happened?
I think I wonder, I guess my thesis about this from reading the film would be that those in the proximity to power when power needs to exert itself will be rewarded for their complicity. And so in that case, in that case, he is basically rewarded with Cross's position, even though, he was actually naturally harmed in that. And I think that's the case of all of these characters, which is that Cross, although is the person who is also committed terrible crimes, but also is victimized by solid gold magic carp, ultimately gets what he wants through complicity. Yeah. And every character kind of, there's an interesting thing about proximity to power and proximity to capitalism, I guess, in this way, in that money can basically buy your ideology at that point.
Yeah.
And that's maybe that's the cynical truth I've been looking for all along.
Maybe it was the real cynicism is the friends we made along the way.
Or also I'm just waiting to sell out in some way.
Oh yeah. Anybody, do you want to buy us?
Yeah. We'll let go.
We're cheap.
Yeah. Real cheap, actually, as it turned out.
Yeah. I gotta pay for a wedding soon. What do you got?
Yeah. $20 will do it.
Yeah, let's make it 50. Anyway, I don't know. I dug this movie, even though I did not think I did.
Yeah.
I would urge you, if you're
did
a person,
you get nigged into loving this movie?
I don't think so. I think the movie did a good job and did what it set out to do. But what it set out to do was kind of subversive, and I'm here for it. Ari Aster kind of just does it. And again, with how much I do really love Beau is Afraid.
Yeah.
I don't like this movie as much. Like I enjoy Beau is Afraid is a deeply uncomfortable film to watch, and I love every minute of watching it.
Yeah.
This movie is an uncomfortable film to watch, and in the moment to moment, I can't tell you, at least this first time I saw it, I didn't really like it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that I'm getting these sort of like Endgame kind of vibes, not the movie, just the end of, watching a film.
The end of time.
Yeah, sure.
The end of world, which is where we're heading.
Yeah. Anyway, that's what I thought. And Sheer, you just didn't, it's not really for you overall.
Look, the other thing that I do love in movies is the ability to revisit them over time and to see how they accumulate over time. And this is one where I'll certainly think about it over time. But that said, Beau is Afraid is not one that has entered my headspace in the time that we've seen it, and I sort of worry about the and this is just from a purely like filmography point of view, sort of somewhat diminishing returns for Ari Aster at this point, because I've revisited Hereditary, for example, and just like that is a movie that has gotten bitter with time, with age. And this is, I'm sort of wondering about that a little bit, but that's neither here nor there. I want to see filmmakers try, taking interesting swings. I really like that he is doing something that is not what he has done before.
Yeah.
And is, made sort of a contemporary Western that is in some way inspired by the Coen brothers, in some way inspired by both JFK and John Ford.
Felt like a Coen brothers Hell or High Water.
Yeah, that kind of thing as well. So, and I like his particular brand of cynicism and nihilism and all the isms that he's got.
Sure.
But I think I personally, on the sort of emotional tether to this that this movie was offering, was not quite attached. And that's neither here nor there. But like I said, if you loved it, I'm not gonna
don't yuck that yum.
I'm not gonna yuck that. I didn't have like strong anti feelings about this movie. And for the most part, I'm happy that a movie like this is the kinds of movies that get in front of us.
There you go. All right. Well, this has been the only podcast about the film Eddington. Shahir, when you are not turning your personal vehicle into a psychopath's billboard to run for public office, where can folks find you?
You can vote for me at my website, suvanova.com. That's SUVANOVA.com. Matt, when you are roaming the streets with your Gatling gun, where can people find you?
You can find me having actually excellent trigger etiquette, like Joaquin Pheonix actually did in this movie, over at my website's Extra History and Extra Credits on YouTube. I believe by the time this comes out, we will either be on episode 2 or 3 of our William McKinley series, looking at his not only tariff policies, but global policies in the Philippines and a couple other places. that ushered in what would be considered the American century, which did not end well for lots of places that were not the United States. That's over there. And coming up, extra credits. The gaming channel is kind of back.
Oh, nice.
Which it never really went anywhere. We've been doing 2 live shows a week, but the animated stuff, we've managed to get our ducks in a row, and we're doing longer form monthly ones. I believe, I don't know by the time this comes out if their first one will be. I think we're shooting for an August 1st release date. We are doing a look back. Actually, weirdly, COVID was the start of this, but there's now the tariffs and a couple other things. The practicalities of what it takes to make a physical board game or book or thing with multiple pieces in 2025, and the supply chain issues and like how it was set up. We're in the perfect storm of why that is a nightmare. So we're sort of deep diving into that by writer Eddie Webb, who has published quite a few games. It's excellent. So I'm looking forward for everyone checking that out. Next week, I don't know. Because we're not giving it a promise you, because we are getting ahead, but we also know we need to do other things. Like there's some in the tank. We're doing other things. Yeah. It's going to be a movie. You're going to love it. It's going to be great.
The promise that we make is that your hard-earned dollars will not be wasted if you send it our way. Because you will get an episode next week. What That's it is, we don't know.
You can send us that. Buy us a coffee. We have a coffee thing in the description. If you got to here and you're like, boy, these guys look thirsty and need caffeine, that's the way to do it. All right, everybody. Well, until next week, we'll talk at your ear holes then.
Bye.
Bye.